central chest pain for 6 months. Um, uh, Being a young female, sir, and difficulty in swallowing, I would like to know whether it is a progressive worsening of difficulty or like any associated pain or odynophagia.
Okay,
And
once you said progressive. Okay.
yes, sir.
What is the relevance of that question? Professor Rajesh?
Yes, sir.
You are there, no?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Okay. Progressive.
Relevance progressive, like any motility disorder being 6 months. And I would like to know, sir, what is the like type of food which he has more difficulty with, whether it's more for liquids or for
Okay,
solids.
so you want to know whether it is progressive. Then you want to know whether it is for solids and liquids. What is the relevance of each of these questions? Progressive in short time, long time.
Sir, motility disorder patient complains of more progressive dysphagia, like initially, like the difficulty.
It's very good. So when you ask somebody has a dysphagia, you're
Yes,
going
sir.
to ask them whether it was progressive or is it intermittent. If it is progressive, Dr. Varghese sir is saying whether short time it has progressed or long time it's progressive. What does it say?
The short time it favors the ages.
So he doesn't know. He is asked to elicit. Every question which he is asking, he has to explain why he is asking the question. Okay.
Sir, if it's a short, but this is 6 month history, sir. A short history would point into more favor of a malignant progress that's going on, sir. With the dysphagia progress very rapidly within a
Dysphagia in a short time span may suggest that it could be a mechanical obstruction due to malignancy, isn't it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And
but progressive,
it's more of a maybe a motility.
No, it could be a benign
obstruction,
or it could be a motility disorder. Okay.
Okay, sir.
What else?
Sir, in this history, I would like to know about her, like whether she has it associated with any odynophagia.
Okay.
And her past medical history, like whether she has taken some, whether she has history of reflux. Sorry, sir, but reflux. Whether she has reflux history.
Okay, but before that, okay, Professor Venkat, please carry on.
So we should know whether it is initially due to what type of food. Is it first solids?
Yes, sir.
Then is it but simultaneous, or is it liquids followed by solids?
So if it is initially with liquids, then followed by solids.
No, you need to ask all these things.
Yes,
so if it is initially solids, then liquids, what does it say?
Initially solids and liquids, more of a mechanical obstruction.
More of mechanical obstruction. If somebody is having liquid and later on solids,
it's more of a motility.
Motility or a neuromuscular involvement.
Neuromuscular.
Isn't it?
Yes, sir. And there is decreased peristalsis.
This meeting is being recorded.
What are the relieving factors for dysphagia?
Okay, sir.
And sir, think of dysphagia, then you go for other associated things, whether it is heartburn or reflux or regurgitation, all that.
Okay.
So, like,
and sir,
what is the onset? What is the progression? Intermittent, and all, and like sir rightly said about the type of food. Then also, what are the relieving factors and what are the aggravating factors also.
Rajesh sir, can you keep your microphone a bit closer?
Okay. So, what about the aggravating factors and the relieving factors for dysphagia? How does that help? Does it have any bearing in the etiology?
Sir, if the dysphagia is more for like, if it is there's improvement with hot liquids, maybe it favors more in favor of the motility or the peristaltic disorder of esophagus. If the patient has improvement with hot liquids, it is most in favor of motility disorder. neuromuscular disorder.
Yeah, I think you can better use the term mechanical dysphagia and motor dysphagia. That will cover.
Okay.
For results.
And sir,
One
if you
more.
look at more history about any corrosive, we don't know whether she has any history of any corrosive intake or any history of any corrosive injury or any history of any radiation to the chest, the thorax region, the neck region, all could cause mechanical obstructions.
Okay. So you are giving history for what are the types of like mechanism for etiology for benign mechanical dysphagia.
Yes, sir, because the
Because that
history is.
what are the this aggravating relieving factors? No, I think you should complete the full list. No, you mentioned temperature of the food. No, is there anything else apart from the temperature of the food which can potentially relieve the dysphagia? Anything which the patient is doing,
Like
may be doing?
following up with a glass of liquid, when if it goes down, it is more in favor of like a mechanical obstruction. But if it's worsened after taking like another glass of water, it's more in favor of a motor dysphagia.
Okay. Anything else? Anything which can suggest it's a motor dysphagia? Any other? Any maneuvers? Any history of patient doing something?
Maneuvering, is it, have you heard of patient adopting certain maneuvers like stretching of the
It's outstretching the arms.
or
Is that
adopting
will open
certain
up?
postures?
Okay, sir.
I think, okay. So
That
the
will
first
more.
is,
The
Sir,
patient
hello.
herself learn these things, no? That by they themselves realize that by doing this, I'm getting relief, no? So that the patient will definitely give a history, no? Because it's her own
Okay.
experience, no? So those
okay,
histories
so dysphagia, the duration, the progression, whether it is short or long, whether it is intermittent, whether it is for solids to start with or liquid to start with, or both for solids and liquid, whether it is aggravated by stress, cold food, whether it is relieved by special maneuvering or drinking fluids, etc., whether it is in the initial act of swallowing. That's very important. The oropharyngeal
Okay,
phase is
sir.
in the first 1 second. So when the patient is able to sort of swallow, initiate the act of swallowing, or whether food remains in the mouth itself, the patient find it difficult. Patient has got a dysarthria, dysphonia, hoarseness of voice, nasal regurgitation, cough, that is choking. All those questions suggest
More
that is the oropharyngeal and
oropharyngeal.
probably neuromuscular. Okay, that's
Yes.
that. Then whether there is anorexia. Anorexia coming along with probably suggests that there is a sinister disorder, and probably Paka esophageal neoplasm in the early phase will not produce anorexia. So if anorexia is there, we may have to think of something else. Then associated symptoms like chest pain, and then
Odynophagia.
history of past history of
Radiation.
problems like reflux symptoms, past history of corrosive ingestion, and
Radiation.
what
Any
the-
surgery in the past.
Drug intake.
Drug injuries.
Okay.
Any medical illness? You will ask for any medical illness?
Sir, myasthenia.
Okay, so neurological
And dismiss if there's some history of any skin rashes or any skin lesions. Maybe she's having scleroderma that is progressing into.
Okay, so you have to ask a history of whether there's a stroke, whether there's a brainstem stroke, whether there's a neuromuscular disorder, whether there is multiple therapy. Okay, all those things, whether it is acute in onset or insidious in onset, you can have neuromuscular disorders occurring acutely, occurring in an insidious fashion also. Okay, so all these things will have to be there in your mind. I think you have to ask very fast about all these things in the first few minutes, and then try to get what exactly is the patient. Professor Venkat, any further points?
No, sir. I think, except I think
Okay,
sometimes
can we proceed?
in motility disorders, sometimes you can have this sudden nasal regurgitation.
Yes, motility disorder, especially so if there is a lot of spasm, the food may be thrown back to the pharynx and sometimes through the nose also.
Often
The patient had one more symptom like chest pain.
Oh yes, sir, chest pain.
What is the relevance of that?
Intermittent central chest pains could be stasis of food.
Which all condition
And,
have
im-
pain along with the dysphagia?
So
Pain
maybe there
on
is
swallowing is
impaction.
different. No, this is not pain on swallowing. This is intermittent chest pain. Okay, we may give more details and then we may be able to analyze.
Okay. One more thing is regurgitation. Often the history may be only when the patient is lying prone. So maybe the patient has a history that goes to sleep in a prone position and wake up in the morning with the pillow getting wet. Not. So these are history like regurgitation which is precipitate on the prone position.
Okay. And so the dysphagia is for liquids. It was insidious in onset for the past 6 months. And for the past 3 months, it has actually gone more for solids and liquids. Symptoms more on some days and less on some days. Slowing, progressive over past the last 6 months. Intermittent central chest pain and mid back pain spontaneously and sometimes during swallowing, relieved within 3 to 5 minutes. No external chest pain or breathlessness. She wakes up from sleep occasionally around 1 to 2 a.m. due to cough since last 1 month, and she goes to sleep after about 30 minutes later. Weight loss for 3 kgs in 6 months.
So can weight loss be used to differentiate achalasia from malignancy? Is it a common feature? Is it only for malignancy or do you see it in achalasia also? Dr. Joe?
Sir, can you hear me? Hello?
Could you hear the question?
Sorry, sir, I couldn't hear you.
Like, when you say history of weight loss, does history of weight loss suggest it's malignancy or can it also be a feature of achalasia cardia?
Sir, but since the weight loss for over 6 months is just 3 kgs, it can occur in achalasia also, sir, because the patient has
It's a common
difficult.
symptom in achalasia.
Yes.
Long
But the quantity of weight loss is less likely to be a malignant, more in favor of a motor dysphagia.
Yeah, the rapidity of the weight loss will suggest whether it's a malignancy or a non-malignant thing. Okay, the rapidity with which the weight loss occurs.
What is this wakes up from the sleep? What does this
So maybe
suggest?
since it shows more of stasis that is getting aspirated and she coughs because of aspiration. So because when she gets into the supine position, the whatever food or the secretion gets stasis in the esophagus. She aspirates it and she coughs.
So which other esophageal disease produce this symptom?
GRD also can produce this.
Okay. So it is regurgitation. So how the
Regurgitation.
what specific history you will ask to find out whether it is a regurgitation due to GRD or due to achalasia?
So if the reflex reflex occurs for more after food or the retrocessional chest pain occurs more after just soon after food intake. So.
It is classically known as acid regurgitation. No? Acid regurgitation. Patient can
Yes.
feel it as a sour fluid, and sometimes it may be bilious, it may be bitter. Okay, but in achalasia cardia, it is the same stuff which the patient has eaten.
So in achalasia cardia, it's predominantly the stasis of food. And when you lie down, you have a regurgitation. But in a gastroesophageal reflux disease, you can either have an acid or a volume reflux. And that can produce this.
Yeah.
Majority of these people who have so much of these reflux tend to have predominantly nocturnal symptoms. And you will expect them to have a larger sliding hiatus hernias.
Okay.
They have reflux. Especially the reflux is waking up in a GERD. As sir said, they may be associated with either a volume reflux or an
acid reflux.
Okay, from this, what do you think? Now we have got the detailed history.
Sir, it's more in favor of a motility or a motor dysphagia because initially it was with liquids and it was insidious in onset and progressing into more solids. And it is slowly progressing and and also symptoms like waking up at night, which shows a regurgitation or aspiration, all in almost points more in favor of a motility.
Is there
disorder.
any point against achalasia? How often you get chest pain?
So chest pain due to stasis of food, and that can
Actually,
this
chest pain is
bacterial
very
overgrowth.
common, which is often very ignored by most of us. When we hear about dysphagia, we concentrate on dysphagia, and in fact, most people with achalasia do have chest pain. They
When
do
you have a
have
chest pain can happen in achalasia. Okay. What is the other usual symptom achalasia patients come to you? When they have
Sir, hello.
Yeah, what is another symptom they can come to you apart from dysphagia, chest pain, and nocturnal regurgitation? Any other history will tell you this could be an achalasia. How do they try to get the dysphagia relieved?
They don't eat much, sir.
No. Sometimes they will require water with each morsel of.
Okay, sir.
When you have
They
each,
follow.
then you drink
Follow
water,
each.
then it's more in favor of a.
Follow each bolus with a drink of water.
Sure. Go ahead, doctor.
Can we move?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very rarely a patient with long-standing achalasia, which was not diagnosed properly, may reach the respiratory physician with the features of
like asthma.
And they present from the respiratory side and get referred to us. I had actually a patient referred for a physician for having diagnosed lung abscess by a CT, and in the CT they found dilated esophagus and then referred to us. This patient probably had long-standing dysphagia from childhood. That patient was not able to understand what dysphagia is. Probably she might have thought this is a normal. Okay, such things really happen. Okay, this.
No significant past history. Appetite is preserved, but she has reduced food intake due to dysphagia. She is shown to a local doctor and referred for an OGD scopy. On examination, she is average build, no physical abnormalities, BMI of 18.2, weight 55 kg, BPO 142/84. The blood routine shows hemoglobin of 9.8, total count of 6,700, platelets 2.8 lakh, ESR is 23, fasting blood sugar is 98, with creatinine of 1.1 and liver function test is normal. Sir, since she has more of a fever of motor dysphagia, barium swallow would give us a.
Which test?
You are very
either it's malignant or benign. The motility. You think is there an option between endoscopy and barium swallow?
Sir, endoscopy and
no. If this patient has come to you,
yes, sir.
Dysphagia. What will you do?
What is the first test? Suppose
first
you
test is
barium, which will you do first, even if you're doing both? Suppose
endoscopy.
Why?
Because endoscopy will you can also you can get better diagnosis like other features, like if there is stasis, if there is esophageal dilatation, and you can go.
Don't talk as if this is achalasia. When a patient got a dysphagia, what is the advantage of endoscopy?
So you can also rule out.
First thing it rules out is
malignancy.
Malignancy, isn't it? That's the most important thing you're always testing. Statistically speaking, in your training, which you have seen esophageal malignancy commonly or achalasia commonly?
Malignancy.
Yeah. So the first thing we do for any dysphagia, your first step will be
upper GI-scopy.
That's what we want to do. First step is upper GI-scopy. Why do you want to think? So if somebody comes with a motility, will you go and do barium swallow?
No, sir. Prior to that, we will do an upper GI-scopy.
Okay, if you are suspecting,
what do you want to see in this place? So you want to do, sir has said, ask his thing. So if you do an endoscopy, what are things you want to see in this patient?
Sir, basically the caliber of the esophagus, sir, if there is any stasis of food, and the Basically the discharges of the esophagus, the wall will assess for
Dr.
the
Remnish, you don't have to think that this is achalasia cardia. In a patient
What
with
do you see? The
dysphagia,
first thing, what do you want to see? If somebody comes with a dysphagia, what is it? The first thing you want to look for?
Sir, is there any obstruction? Any lesion, sir?
Obstruction.
Lesion.
You want to see, first thing you want to rule out is a mechanical obstruction.
Mechanical obstructions.
If you want to look at a mechanical obstruction, we want to see whether it's malignant or benign.
Okay, sir.
If both these things are ruled out, then you want to see what is the other cause.
Okay, sir.
Like a
Okay, sir.
motility.
okay, what else? So you are looked at and there is no stricture. That's when you find a obstructive lesion, whether it looks like what are the features by which you say a stricture is looking more likely to be malignant than benign?
More malignant with the mucosa, like there is ulcerations, friable mucosa, irregular.
That you
the
can have
wall.
in a peptic ulcer, peptic esophagitis.
More of malignance,
Asymmetric, okay.
asymmetric wall involvement.
Nodular, elevated margins, inverted margins, all those things. A smooth circumferential narrowing of a
More in favor of benign.
benign. Okay. Now, once you have ruled out a stricture, what else you will look in the esophagus?
Ruled out stricture, sir.
You have ruled out stricture. There is no stricture.
Okay, sir. Then look at the caliber of the esophagus, sir.
Okay, lumen size. Okay.
Lumen size. Then we definitely, once you put the scope itself, we can definitely see if there is stasis of food.
Okay, stasis of food or fluid. Okay.
Fluid. Then we can look at the wall, how the wall is. Is there any features like loss of peristalsis?
Okay. Okay.
And sir, other features like furrowing, like because eosinophilic esophagitis can also cause these dysphagia symptoms, sir. Other mucosis.
The features like ring,
furrowing, trachealization of the esophagus.
So you make a thorough examination of the esophagus for ulceration, for furrowing, for evidence of multiple rings.
Any webs or rings.
And other things. And then, okay, after esophagus, where will you go?
Sir, then we carefully examine the G junction, sir.
What all things you will look?
We look at the, we'll inflate the, at the G junction, and we'll assess the mucosal, the Z line, sir.
Okay.
And if there is a hiatus hernia, like hiatus hernia.
Okay, you assess the Z line, you look for hiatus hernia, and then?
And then we'll slowly try to push the scope, sir.
Okay.
And if we find it goes in freely, then it almost indicates that the G junction is with no resistance. If the scope goes in freely, less likely for it to be an eclipse.
Okay, so you look for resistance and normal entry. Okay, then you reach stomach, and there is some resistance at the G junction, but we could manage. You reach the stomach. So
okay, sir.
Is that enough?
Is there anything from the stomach? Something important which you have to see.
Sir, the fundus. So you look for any mass in the fundus that can retrovertency, because even mass in the fundus can present as a pseudoeclasia.
Okay.
Cardia mass.
In a case of achalasia cardia, can there be any mucosal changes in the esophagus?
Stasis ulcers.
Someone else murmuring, please. Okay, question to Ramnesh. Can there be any mucosal changes in the esophagus due to achalasia? Dr. Intab, please mute. Dr. Sojan, please mute Dr. Indikab.
Hello.
Yes, Ramnesh. Question was to you.
Sir, my name is Dr. Jose.
No. You're Joe. Okay. So, Dr. Joe.
Sir.
Sorry for that mistake, but please
sir.
answer that question.
Okay, sir. Other mucosal changes, sir. Sir,
What mucosal changes you will find in an achalasia patient? That was the question. Will there
sir,
be mucosal changes or will it be clean and neat?
no, sir. There will be mucosal changes like cyst ulcer.
Okay, great. So one is endoscopy. Okay. And
Sir, further investigation, sir.
okay.
Hello.
This was what was provided to us. So this is the X-ray. What is this X-ray?
So barium swallow.
Please read it out.
Sir, it's a barium swallow which shows dilated esophagus. The entire esophagus looks grossly dilated, and the walls look smooth, but there is a abrupt, uh, like a sort of like a um bird beak sign at the G junction, sir.
Okay.
And some of the barium has like gone
into
through
the
the G
stomach.
junction and it rests stomach, sir. You can see some.
Okay. So in this patient, you should also look at the fundus where there's a gas for a soft tissue shadow. If you are lucky, you may find a soft tissue shadow in a patient with
Which may
neoplasm.
be causing obstruction.
Okay. Now, regarding this barium and endoscopy content, there are some examiners are very particular about it. In fact, I would say Professor Vivek Saraswat will keep a young patient on one side and an old patient on the other side and say that both have got dysphagia and ask you which investigation will you do like that. Okay, so if you are put into a tight situation in an elderly person where malignancy or other indications are very high, the preference is always for endoscopy. And there is nothing wrong even if you do endoscopy in an achalasia also. Okay. So you must just say that I will try to do endoscopy because you can do it in your department without asking for any appointment or anything. Okay. And if at the end of endoscopy you don't find anything or be suspicious of achalasia, maybe confirm it with, if you want, you can confirm with barium or by other investigation. Professor Rajesh, you wanted to tell something?
The other thing is if you do the barium first, sometimes in achalasia, it may be retained for a very longer period. So doing endoscopy the very next day and all, they often sometimes they can retain barium and all that. So I mean on the mucosa, not the column.
Very difficult to remove sort of a pasty barium from the esophagus. That's another problem. Okay. So always say I would prefer to do endoscopy. If you are repeatedly asked only, you say barium. That confusion should not be there. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. What is this investigation? Have you heard of this?
So this looks like since the minute and the column measurement, it looks like a time barium esophagogram.
When do people do this?
It is basically done if you have suspicion clinically of achalasia and also for post-operative, like if you
this is not for diagnosis, but I think to assess the severity and then to assess the post-procedure response.
Effective response.
An objective method of trying to find out, and depending upon the height of the column, some people also take the height and width and to take a calculation.
After dilatation.
No, this.
Yes, numeric dilatation, sir, to assess this effectiveness.
So
your question was not clear, Venkat.
Sorry.
Professor Venkat?
Yeah.
What was that question?
No, not question. I was just telling this is generally done as you just to reinforce your thing. That, previously, most of the time, the dilatation used to be done for achalasia cardia. So post dilatation, I think to look at the adequacy of dilatation,
response.
Esophagogram.
Okay.
Okay.
This question we have already asked and we have found out this is a finding. All those questions I think we asked. Okay. Now, further evaluation.
So with further evaluation to confirm, definitely we have to do a high resolution manometry to assess the type of.
One on the right side is the patient. What do you feel?
The right side, sir, there is 100% pan esophageal pressurization.
Hmm.
So it must be a type 2 and with no
Which is this,
relaxation.
what is this?
That's UES pressure.
This is
The LES. There is no relaxation in swallow and 100% pan esophageal pressurization.
so which type?
Type 2, sir.
Okay. So tell us about type 1, type 2, type 3.
Sir, as per the Chicago classification, type 1, first of all, we have to confirm with more than 10 wet swallows and see if there is the IRP is measured more than 15 in all the swallows. And if it is more than 15, then we have to look at the in each swallow. We have to see if there is peristalsis, loss of peristalsis in all the 100% swallows, then it is type 1. And type 2, if there is more than 20% panispheric pressurization with IRP more than 15 is type 2. And type 3, when there is a distal latency of less than 4.5 seconds and with an IRP of more than 15, it's type 3.
What is type 3?
The type 3 IRP is more than 15 and you find there is
20% spastic contractions.
and sir, this distal latency is less than 4.5 seconds.
Now, how do you classify Chicago classification?
She is going to type 1, type 2, and type 3. And with
Classify
type,
as disorders of EGJ outflow.
yes.
And you
This
have
is only
disorders of peristalsis.
this is huge classification.
There are two classes. There's one.
When
There is so
you are
you
doing
class
the-
you subset disorders of EGJ outflow and disorders of peristalsis.
Peristalsis. Okay, yes.
Disorders of EGJ outflow, you have
Type 1, type
type 1, type 2, type 3, and
type 3. And esophageal gastric junction outflow obstructions.
EGJ outflow obstruction. What is EGJ outflow obstruction?
EGG outflow obstruction, like inspired, like if the patient has a high IRP, but the distal latency is not less than 4.5 seconds.
Disease?
That is EGG outflow obstruction.
You have a median IRP is elevated,
Yes, sir.
but does not meet the criteria of achalasia.
That is, sir.
That is EGJ obstruction. So, what are the disorders of peristalsis?
This is a peristalsis, like typically you have to see if there is 100%. Sir, hello.
What are the disorders of peristalsis?
Diffuse esophageal spasm, hypercontractile esophagus.
One is absent contractility, then
Absent contractility and diffuse esophageal spasm.
what is the difference
And,
between absent contractility and achalasia?
Absent contractility in achalasia, the IRP will be high. In absent contractility, the IRP won't be
IRP is normal.
normal. In
Then what else is there in disorders of peristalsis?
hypercontractile esophagus
Okay.
and ineffective esophageal movement.
What is distal esophageal spasm?
Esophageal spasm when the distal latency is less than 4.5 with a normal IRP.
Venkat, you are
20% swallows should show some spasm.
Okay, sir. And distal latency is less than 4.5 seconds.
What is ineffective esophageal motility?
Ineffective esophageal motility when 70% of the swallows are there is absent peristalsis.
What else can cause achalasia variant syndrome?
So these
Where you will not do a poem or you will not do a dilatation. Opioid substance abuse.
Okay.
So actually,
Yeah.
Chicago classification 3 also added on opioid substance abuse. Okay.
Okay. Sir.
Okay, so how will you manage?
Sir, management, basically we have to divide the patients into high risk and low risk. High risk means mainly patients who are old age with other comorbidities. Such patients we will try with a botulinum injection, and if there is still symptoms, we'll try with medical management with calcineurin blockers, and nitrates. But in low risk patients, in type 3, the definitive treatment is POEM. And type 1 and 2, you can either go ahead with
This patient, what will you do?
for this patient, being a type 2, you can do either a POEM or a laparoscopic Hellas myotomy. But POEM has got a better outcome, sir.
What is success rate of dilatation?
Sir, dilatation with, sir, hello, sir. Pneumatic dilatation, sir.
Yeah, pneumatic.
Okay, pneumatic dilatation using a non-compliant Regiflex balloon. We can, with a diameter of 30, 35, and 40 millimeters, we can gradually dilate the junction, sir. And by doing so, we
What
can.
do you expect her LES to be in this list? She's only 43.
Yes, sir. LES to her LES, sir.
Will it be rigid or it will be very light, this one, compared to 70 years?
It will be rigid, sir.
At her age, the resistance to LES will be quite high in this patient. So
Okay.
dilatation may help you in about 60 to 70% of times, but they may require repeated dilatations.
Repeated dilatation.
So the other options are
Sir,
what are the other treatment options available?
sir, other than Hellas and POEM, sir.
What is Hellas?
Hellas myotomy is like you incise. It can either be laparoscopic or open. You strip the up till the mucosa, sir. You strip the muscle layer up till the submucosa.
So you generally do all the thing of the circular myelin thing. Then what else you do with Hellas after doing Hellas?
After doing Hellas, you can.
You do only Hellas, or in Hellas you combine something?
With
Complication pulling Hellas, which needs to
fun-
be addressed.
Fundoplication.
So either is it Heller or it is something else? What is the full name of the surgery?
Laparoscopic Hellas myotomy.
Okay, that was the original one. That is modified nowadays. It is not a Heller door. What is door added to this? Yeah.
With the fundoplication.
Do a fundoplication. Okay.
So neuromuscular causes.
So the neuromuscular cause for dysphagia, especially in myasthenia, progressive.
One second. Prakriti Shah, please mute. Okay, I have done it. Okay, apart from achalasia, okay, myasthenia.
As the complication in.
I said neuromuscular. So actually start from the cerebral cortex down to the muscle, no? So it's a huge list. Okay. So I think we have already covered, starting from stroke, cerebral stroke, okay, brainstem, neural, bilateral tension, muscular disorders, all those things. Okay. Secondary achalasia.
So pseudoecclesia, like if there is a mass lesion in the fundus that is causing external compression, that can present as ecclesia.
Okay.
This Trypanosoma cruzi, it can cause megaesophagus, that's a parasitic disease, present as ecclesia.
Respiratory complication we already mentioned. Aspiration pneumonia, repeated aspiration, they can have lung abscess. Gold standard actually depends upon the type.
Types.
Botulinum injection, indications and disadvantages.
Indication is for high-risk patients who may not tolerate an invasive procedure. And disadvantage, it recurrence is more. You'll have to do multiple.
Less effect, costlier, and you should never do it provided you are planning for another major procedure. It cannot be done as an interim procedure because it will produce severe scarring of the G junction and subsequent procedures will become difficult, especially surgery. Okay, long-term results of pneumatic dilatation, myotomy, and POEM. Regarding relief of achalasia, dysphagia.
Among the three, the highest rate for reflex is for POEM. Almost.
First I am asking you the effect wise. See, after some time the effect will wane off. Pneumatic dilatation, the success may be 85% to 90% to begin with, and after 2-3 years, the success rate wanes off. Okay, so similarly, I want to know about myotomy and POEM.
Long-term results for myotomy and POEM is comparable, more for POEMs. This is better for POEM.
Okay. Prevalence of reflex disease.
Reflex disease, but even though the long-term effects are better, but reflex disease is more for POEMs and then least for pneumatic.
You know the percentage?
Yes, I'm not able to.
Okay. It is around 10% for pneumatic dilatation, but other things depends upon. For example, if you do a Heller-Doer, the reflex again will be much less. POEM, I think, is still higher. It depends upon different series. What do you think, Dr. Rajesh? Some people say 10, some people say up to 30% are described.
Go up to 30%. 34% is also sometimes.
Yeah, 30% is what described for POEM. Is there any modification of POEM by which you can reduce the reflex?
It's a long myotomy, a long segment myotomy.
So that will completely destroy all the sphincters, no?
What is POEM F?
I don't know.
Any advanced endoscopic method, that is in addition to POEM. What is F?
Yes, reader.
I don't know.
There is a POEM combined with a fundoplication. You can do endoscopic. It's called the POEM F.
What is the usual length of the myotomy in POEM? Because there is a lot of variation, but generally what they say in the stomach.
8 to 10 centimeters.
No, at least 6 centimeter in the esophagus and 2 centimeter in the cardia. That's the
Totally.
usual. There's some difference in various others. That's the usual one they say.
Okay, any further questions?
There one thing is regarding secondary achalasia and pseudoecclesia. Is there any difference between the two? What is pseudoecclesia and what is secondary achalasia?
Especially all-time examiners will keep on asking.
There is some confusion in this, like that's why. Because some books give it differently and some books use synonymously also.
Actually, the basic contention is that achalasia cardia is an idiopathic disorder which we do not know the etiology. So any condition where there is a cause which is found out as the reason, there is a cause for the achalasia-like picture, it is called secondary. Okay, pseudoachalasia is some condition which will mimic achalasia, but still that part is, the Schlesinger also is not very clear.
Yeah.
Even I am not so very clear about it.
Actually, some people say like if you have Chagas disease, so that's a secondary cause for achalasia. If it's a tumor, it's a pseudoachalasia. Some have used it alternately also. So there is some confusion in that.
But at least secondary is very clear. That means if there is a cause, because achalasia cardia by itself is considered an idiopathic disorder. I think pseudoachalasia, the term is not used by many people, but still some examiners may ask you. Okay.
The other thing is the post this procedure. Like there's a lot of things regarding the height and all that for the time barium mesogram. But the simple thing is it should be at least 50% reduction in the height. If it is more than 50% is there, that means it's a failure of the procedure. That's a simple way to remember the how to interpret after the procedure. Height change in the height of the isogram. There is some comments from Madam Jayanti. We'll read it out. That is about Eckart score. What is Eckart score?
Eckart score is basically a scoring system to assess the first of all the severity and also post procedure to assess the effectiveness of the procedure done. So it includes dysphagia, regurgitation, pain, and dysphagia.
Jayanti ma'am, any further things we should be asked? You want to add anything?
I think you are discussing, so I'm just listening. No problem.
Okay. Okay, Joe, thank you for the discussion. We'll move on to the next person. Dr. Remnish, are you there?
I'll just make one comment. In one of the DNP exams, there was a nurse, 19-year-old, who came with history of dysphagia and presenting just like achalasia with repeated dilatation. Okay, and then developed a stricture. And then when they reviewed the case, actually it was a CA esophagus. So I think very important is just because a person is young, don't presume that all these cases are achalasia. You have to give a wide differential, consider malignancy also as an important differential, and at times it becomes difficult. Okay, so some of the Viva questions is what I've mentioned.
Dr. Aniket, are you there?
Yeah, one more thing is that now you should know at least one guideline, at least briefly. For example, the ACG guideline 2020 is there. So I think that is the most recent guideline. So you want to quote the statistics or the outcomes and all that, so you can have one reference.
Today, Dr. Remnish.
Yes, sir, I am here. Sir.
You are Aniket?
Aniket. Yes, sir.
Okay. So Aniket, we'll go to the next case. Please read.
Case 2, a 65-year-old male with type 2 diabetes mellitus, high BP, and CAD on irregular treatment, presented with progressive dysphagia since last 3 months, initially for solid and now for liquid. And patient presented to emergency department with aphasia since 1 day, no pain or dyspnea.
What is the situation?
Sir, here I want to ask regarding the dysphagia that how to start with and what was the onset and how it progressed and how long it was.
You heard us how we ask questions in a patient with the dysphagia. So we don't want to repeat that. He has presented to the ED with the inability to swallow for 1 day, since 1 day. What do you think has happened?
It is grade 5 dysphagia, sir.
Been having dysphagia for 3 months. Initially for solid, now for liquids. Suddenly she is presented with aphasia. So what could have happened?
Sir, here an old lady with a short history. I'm expecting.
Can you be more clear? See, here is a patient who's come to you saying she's got dysphagia for 3 months. Initially solid and liquid. Suddenly they brought the emergency because she couldn't swallow her saliva also.
Sir, it denotes some complete obstruction, sir.
What is it due to? Most commonly, what is it due to?
Due to malignancy, sir, I'm suspecting in this case.
What could have happened a situation where she was brought with aphasia?
It's an acute event, no?
Suddenly, what can block it?
Maybe some food bolus while swallowing some food bolus.
Somebody should put on this chat their answers.
Please don't put the answers in the chat box.
Refrain from doing that, please. You tell me what could have happened.
Sir, in the obstruction, maybe some food particle or some food
particle. There should have been a food bolus or some
food bolus, sir. food bolus.
You should ask them whether the patient suddenly had a food bolus. Commonly, they'll have a large, sometimes a non-vegetarian bolus or whatever, something like that will go and get stuck there.
Yes, yes.
So that is why if somebody, okay.
I want to ask that whether any cough with expectoration or whether patient had any fever with chills was there or not, and a history of regurgitation. I want to ask.
Which other condition can have food impaction?
Sir, in near complete obstruction.
No, let's rule out mechanical obstruction. In which other condition patient will come say that food is stuck in the mid-esophagus?
In case of stricture also, sir, stricture patient will complain.
So benign associated malignant strictures.
Mechanical obstruction. Where else can you get?
Pardon, sir?
Not in
Without mechanical obstruction.
Dysphagia can be an stricture. Stricture can be malignant. Which is the condition where a patient can come tell you that his food gets stuck during swallowing in the mid-esophagus?
It can be benign or malignant cause, sir. In benign cause, it may be stricture. It may be, sir.
Doctor, I'm not asking about the mechanical obstruction at all. Just what is the other condition where patient will come and tell you that the food is getting stuck in the mid-esophagus? Say a patient is 15-year-old.
Young patient. And there is no stricture.
Eosinophilic esophagitis.
In diverticulum, sir, like in
no.
first
diverticulum. Also gave the answer. Eosinophilic esophagitis.
Eosinophilic esophagitis.
Yes.
Okay. So in this patient, what do you think is the diagnosis? 65-year-old male, progressive.
Here is the old lady with short history. I will suspect malignancy, sir, first.
So what probably you'll think of is that this patient has got a malignant obstruction, and now she has come with aphasia because of a food bolus obstruction over a malignant stricture. Okay.
Yes. Patient has a history of weight loss of 5 kg since last 6 months. Also complaining of loss of appetite, BMI 20.3, weight 62, pallor, left supraclavicular lymph node present, BP 170 by 106 and pulse 102 per minute, respiratory 22 per minute. In ECG, there was T wave inversion from B4 to V6, no STT changes.
No ST change. T inversion is there. Okay.
And abdominal and chest examination showed no abnormalities.
So weight loss, progressive dysphagia, 65 years old, left supraclavicular node. What is the diagnosis? Where is the obstruction?
This all points towards esophageal cancer. And
so esophageal cancer, upper or mid esophagus?
For that,
you are sure it's esophageal cancer? What does left supraclavicular lymph node say?
If it is...
Doctor, you should be ready for this answer. The next question will be, trace out the lymphatic drainage of the esophagus.
For that, we should know the...
Supraclavicular node, positive. Weight loss of 5 kgs, progressive dysphagia to solids, then liquids, now aphagic.
Most probably upper esophagus, sir.
You get left supraclavicular node in the upper esophagus.
Mid esophagus.
Just go back and read about the whole lymphatic drainage of the esophagus. When somebody has got a dysphagia with the left supraclavicular node, where do you place the anatomical obstruction? Dr. Varghese, sir?
Yes.
For Rajesh, sir, Jayanti, madam?
Low.
Below?
I'm not sure.
You can't come and tell me below, above and all, man.
Okay, statistically, which is likely, esophagus or stomach?
Stomach.
Fundus.
Stomach, sir.
Which situation you get
Which part
a
of the stomach?
supracapital lymph node more often?
So
Stomach
when
in
do you think
gastric malignancy we get in fundal of the
Okay,
stomach.
loss of appetite is not a usual picture for early esophageal malignancy, especially cancer. And they in
Yes,
fact
sir.
have voracious appetite. They want to eat. They in fact, that is why most of the people actually develop food impaction. They actually steal food sometimes. Okay.
So if you have a left supraclavicular node in a patient who got dysphagia, then most of the times the growth will be in the G junction.
Yes, sir.
Okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Don't tell me upper esophagus, then we'll stop the discussion there. Okay.
Here the endoscopic picture showing a food particle, food
Okay,
bolus stuck.
how do you manage this?
Here we will try to remove the food particle with either snare or roth net.
What you said there, what bolus is that? Which are the
What is
common
it?
foods which can go and form a bolus over a thing?
Look like. Is it vada or is it meat?
Meat.
Meat
Looks like chicken.
Look like,
Bolus.
yeah.
Longitudinal fibers, more like chicken.
Yes. Here I want to try to remove it with either snare or if roth net. I think it is difficult.
Okay,
Or,
snare. Most of the time people use snare. Okay. Try to pick up with the ordinary foreign body biopsy courses will not be successful because it will break away. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, that was done, and this is the finding after that.
Yes, so here we can see a nodular ulcer proliferative lesion at the G junction, sir.
Circumferential ulceronodular proliferative lesion. Okay.
Yes.
At the G junction.
The OGDs or meat bolus impaction at lower esophagus removed with multiple retrieval devices showed circumferential narrowing of lower esophagus at 36 centimeter from incisor. Lumen narrowed to 4 mm. Scope could not be negotiated beyond.
What will you do?
Sir, I will take the biopsy, sir. From
take the biopsy, but you're not able to push the scope. What do you do?
Maybe we can try to for the CRE balloon dilatation, sir.
You need to do.
And then
you need to luminize the. You have to luminize the esophagus. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So how do you do this?
Either we can put absolute alcohol injection, or we can do with the pneumatic dilatation, sir. Like
pneumatic injection is equal to balloon dilatation for luminization.
No, sir.
What do you do next? You see this. Where will you take the patient next? What do you do, and why do you want to do?
We will try to.
Can you just keep it to yourself? Don't put it in the chat box, please. Next, we need to dilate to look at what do you want to look at. The esophagus is 36 centimeters. What will you do next?
We will try to negotiate to go in the stomach.
It will not go, doctor. We'll negotiate. If you try to negotiate, it will perforate, no? You're not able to push the scope. Yeah. So what do you do next?
We will first cross the guide wire, so try to pass the guide wire, and then
pass the guide wire, and
we can do the dilatation, sir.
Where?
Or the other thing is we can go for CT.
All you need to do is to shift the patient to a fluoroscopy room, put in a guide wire. I would do it definitely under a fluoroscopy. Then we could dilate it. Okay?
Yes.
Your answer should be that you would do a dilatation. Why do we do dilatation? It will give us the extent of the tumor.
Yes.
isn't it?
Yes, sir.
If you extent of the tumor, it will open up a lumen for him to swallow. Third thing is after that you can pass a Ryle's tube for his feeding. These three things can be done. Now, when you want to dilate, how do you want to dilate? What are the types of how do you dilate?
So there are
What are
two
the types
options.
of dilators available?
There are two options, sir. Either CI dilatation or Savary-Giller dilatation.
So either a Buji dilatation or a balloon dilatation.
Balloon dilatation or Buji dilatation. In the
You want to do it under fluoroscopy.
under fluoroscopy.
So you have to do it under a fluoroscope. Okay. So how will you, if you're a Buji dilatation, how will you decide how long you'll go into it?
In case of the long stricture, a Buji dilatation is preferable, and in case of the short stricture, a CRE balloon dilatation.
Not
But
matter, it's all your comfort what you dilate, but make sure that you dilate so that without any complication under fluoro, you have taken biopsies. Dilatation does not cause hematogenous spread of malignancy. No. So now you have dilated, you have gone in. So the advantages of dilatation here would be to see the extent of the tumor, to see in G junction, how much of G junction, fundus or lesser curves involved. Third is at the same time you can pass in a Ryle's tube and make this thing to pass the two thing and to make sure that you can also give him nutrition, isn't it?
Yes.
Why is nutrition important, doctor, here?
Sir, because if the growth will be resectable, then to go under surgery, we need good nutrition.
The results of a resectable surgery is dependent on a good nutrition of the patient, right?
Yes.
Okay, and then next what? So you have taken biopsies. Then what else you'll do now?
Then I want to do a CT of the patient to look for the extent of the growth.
CT.
And
which CT you will do?
CCT, abdomen and thorax. Sir.
CCT abdomen and
thorax.
And
thorax, chest, sir, chest.
CCT abdomen and thorax both you will do. Okay.
Yes, sir.
CCT thorax and abdomen you will do.
Yes, sir.
What do you want to see? What are the things you want to see in a CCT abdomen?
I want to see first the extent of the primary growth and how it.
Extent of the growth, number one. Number two.
I want to see the lymph nodes involvement.
Lymph node involvement. In G junction growth, okay, tell me which lymph nodes can get involved. Supposing you have perigastric nodes.
Yes, sir.
In a G junction growth, is it operable, not operable? Let me ask you something. If you have a mid-esophageal malignancy and a perigastric nodes, if you have a G junction growth and a perigastric nodes, which is operable?
Yes, sir. But in mid-esophagus, it is like mids.
In esophagus, if you do gastric and celiac nodes, they are non-operable. But in G junction, look, it still comes under loco-regional nodes. So you want to look at the nodes, you want to look at the extent, you want to look at the irregularity of the mucosa. What else will show you?
Any vascular involvement, sir.
Vascular involvement, correct. Aortic involvement.
Yes.
Then?
And
can it show a breach in the serosa?
Pardon, sir? Hello?
Can it show a breach in the serosa? You should also look at the serosal involvement, isn't it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And
why?
We can see because if it will cross the serosa, it will be T4.
Excellent. T4 lesion.
Yes.
If you come with dysphagia, what is the lesion?
T3 or more, sir, more than T3.
Almost always T3. Yes, correct. Okay.
And
You want to do
and we can see the metastasis also, if any
Yeah,
metastasis.
so you want to look at the metastasis in the mediastinum, or you want to look at it as the liver, okay?
Liver, yes.
Hmm.
Here is a transverse section of the abdomen. This is the arterial phase, and here we can see a growth involving the GE junction almost completely obstructing the esophagus and extending to the stomach, sir. And
Okay, only one section is shown. You can read the description.
yes, sir. A mass lesion fundus of the stomach affecting cardia and involving lower esophagus of 4 centimeter. Multiple lymph nodes 8 to 12 mm, perigastric, periesophageal, and around celiac axis, and small hypodense lesions in the liver, very mid.
Okay, what else you want to do staging?
So it is stage 4 disease. But before going to that, if any of the cervical lymph nodes showed atypical cells suggestive of adenocarcinoma, how will you stage the carcinoma of stomach?
What stage is this?
It's stage 4, sir, because there is a metastasis in the liver, but that is not confirmed. That is
What about cervical lymph node?
Cervical.
Yes, a positive cervical lymph node, no?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
It's a CS stomach extending to the cardia and lower esophagus. Do you
So I'm
think
not
it is
sure
the
whether
other way around? Do you think it is the other way around? Carcinoma esophagus going to the stomach? Have you heard
no,
of
sir,
NDT?
it looked like Seward Seward type 3, sir.
I think practically CA esophagus doesn't invert the stomach, no? It is CA
Yes.
stomach which inverts into the lower esophagus.
Yes, sir.
So this is GE junction growth, adenocarcinoma. What is the CWOT classification?
Seward type 1, 2, and 3. So in type 1, the growth will extend from 1 centimeter above to 5 centimeter above the G junction. Type 2, 1 centimeter above to 2 centimeter below. And type 3, 2 centimeter below to 5 centimeter below from the G junction.
What is this? There's also a suspicion of liver met. So what will be the TNM classification in this? Serosa is breached.
T4, sir. T4, N1, and M1.
But the cervical lymph nodes are affected.
Cervical lymph nodes are already affected.
So I'm not sure that whether it will come in metastasis or.
If it's a met liver, it's M1. Okay.
Yes.
Lymphatic drainage we have already asked, but I think everyone has to read about the lymphatics of esophagus and how it spreads to the cervical lymph node, the periesophageal and the upper abdominal lymph nodes in CA esophagus, and also for CA stomach. And management.
So for management, first is the staging.
We have done staging in this patient. What do you want to do?
Yes, sir. So first we want to confirm that whether the liver lesion is a METs or not.
Okay, FNAC is a MET.
If it is a MET, then it is the stage 4 disease, and here
what will it give?
Here we
what
can
is
do
the survival rate will be here? G junction growth, serosa, perigastric nodes, it's left cervical node, possible met in the liver.
Survival is less, maybe less than.
What will be less than or what will be the percentage 6 months survival?
Less than 30%, sir.
Less than 20%, yeah.
So here I want to optimize the patient. First, because his weight is, I think, low, sir. BMI is only
Most of
18.
these patients will be nutrition deficient. That's why we put in a Ryle's tube and make sure that they get it. Okay.
Yes, so first I want to ensure the nutrition of the
Okay,
patient.
now this patient has got, he's got left cervical node, lymph nodes. At least how can you facilitate his eating now? He's got a met in the liver. What you can do?
Sir, for eating, there are various techniques like first is the
So what will you
tube.
do to this patient, doctor? This patient has got a T4 lesion. He's got a cervical node adenocarcinoma. He's got a nodes. He's got a met in the liver.
Aniket, you are from Lakeshore, no?
Yes, sir.
What do you do?
What will you do for this patient?
So we can go for same insertion also.
Tell me what we can do. How can
You
can do a
endoscopic.
palliative esophageal stenting, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
You should be very, very definite with your answers. Don't tell me you'll go for SEMS and all. Tell that you go for a palliative esophageal stenting. So if we want to do a palliative esophageal stenting at 36 centimeters, it's going into the stomach.
Yes, sir.
So he agrees for a SEMS. What
Yes,
kind of SEMS you will put?
Sir, since your G junction growth, I will put better with the.
Now, will you put a uncovered or fully covered or partially covered?
I will put uncovered stent, sir.
You no longer put uncovered. So
partially covered stent.
Partially covered stents. So this is beyond the G junction. So what will be the problem if you put a stent?
So
what
after putting a stent,
anticipate?
first is the G reflux, sir.
One is reflux. Number two.
Number two is the.
Supposing you put a stent into the G through the 3 junction to the stomach, and third day he is not able to eat.
Sir, because the end of the SEMS may impinge on the stomach,
Stomach
which may
wall.
cause.
So you need to place the stent. And how do you prevent reflux?
To prevent reflux, sir, we can tell the patient.
Is there any anti-reflux stents available?
Yes, anti-reflux stents are there. That is also one option, sir.
How do you prevent migration of the stent in this patient?
To prevent migration, sir, we can fix the stent with a hemoclip or suture device.
Or you put a large flange stent.
Yes, sir.
Okay, these are some questions. Can I go ahead? Verghese, sir, you can go.
Yeah. I think most of the things have been already asked. Of course, operable adenocarcinoma, you have to go for what type of surgery?
Sir, gastrectomy and lower esophagectomy, sir.
Okay. And of course, they do a lot of
and
extended lymphadenectomy.
And esophagojejunostomy.
Any role for chemo radiation? Pre-op, post-op? You are not so sure. Okay, pre-Singer. Many people follow it up with, in a case of curative surgery, also they follow it up with the chemotherapy. Okay.
This is what, if this patient has had no liver met or the left supraclavicular node, how do you think you could have managed this patient?
Then we can plan for the resection, sir, surgical resection.
This patient's serosa is breached. There are perigastric nodes.
Then, sir, chemotherapy.
You have to what chemotherapy? Adjuvant chemotherapy?
Yes, sir.
Or neoadjuvant?
Can you downstage the disease?
You need to first optimize and put him on neoadjuvant chemotherapy.
Yes, sir.
How many cycles you will reassess this patient after first surgery? After how many cycles of chemotherapy you will reassess this patient?
4 cycles.
Anything you know idea?
I'm not sure, sir.
So you always know that by after 6 weeks, you think. So if this patient is operable, can we put a SEMS?
No, sir. And then in that case, we'll put the nasogastric.
Never put SEMS for a patient who has possibility of undergoing a curative surgery. Okay?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Varghese, sir.
How will you decide the optimal length of a stent for esophagus for G junction?
So first we assess the length of the obstruction,
Okay.
and the length of the stent ideally we will take 2 centimeter proximal and 2 centimeter distal, because if you put the stent, there is a chance of the stent shortening.
Okay. Good. Are you aware of anti-reflux stent and what is the status of anti-reflux stent now?
So anti-reflux stents are there, but it's not available, sir. In anti-reflux, there is.
It was a lot of people are talking about anti-reflux stent.
With the Wilson Cook, there was anti-stents, but I think more or less now we manage with large flange stents.
Yeah.
But the migration.
Okay.
Even reflux, you can always ask the patient to.
The first anti-reflux
That stent used to be called as Kulvinder Singh Dua stent.
Yeah, Dua stent.
Another thing which I want to regard migration. No? When you're doing visual SEMS placement in the same setting as endoscopy, one way is you avoid excess dilatation. Instead, you can use a pediatric scope to see the lower extent, because if you put the SEMS in the same setting, the chance of migration is higher if you over dilate.
Okay. Any further questions? Jayanti ma'am, any further questions you want to ask? Any clarifications?
What are the various ablative therapies?
Can you repeat that question?
What are the various ablative therapies?
Ablative.
You can do radio frequency ablation, ma'am.
We have 10 minutes, so we can take the next case and then perhaps ask.
Either we do a laser ablation or
RFA, what is PDT, what is alcohol?
What is photodynamic therapy?
Photodynamic.
Answer should just come out in 2 seconds. No? What is PDT? When we talk
Previously, before the stent
is the biggest.
Should we take this case as a very ultra short case? We have 10 minutes. We can finish it in. Okay, Dr. Remnish, are you there?
This one question in chat box, somebody's asked whether you should do a CT abdomen in all cases of CA-esophagus, proximal and mid. I think at least upper abdomen cut should be there when you do in any case of CA-esophagus.
I think upper abdominal cut should be definitely done, because you can expect a lymph nodes, no?
Yeah.
And also help us to find out mets in the liver also. So upper abdominal cuts are must. And similarly, most of the people now do a chest CT also to look for lung mets and other things when you have a abdominal malignancy also.
Yeah.
Okay, we don't have Dr. Remnish. If there is any person who is volunteering, I will give you a case. Dr. Joe, you want to volunteer again, or are you tired?
Okay, sir.
Okay. So you go for the second innings. Read fast.
Sir, 41-year-old female, unemployed, unmarried, heartburn for the past 15 years, intermittent chest pain on swallowing, occasional non-exertional pain felt in the central chest, lasts for 45 minutes, difficulty for solids for the past 6 months, gradually increasing in severity. Patient takes soft solids and semi-solid food for the past 2 months. There is weight loss of 4 kg in 6 months.
Okay, this much history is only provided. We want you to make a diagnosis.
Sir, long-standing heartburn with intermittent, along with the heartburn, there is intermittent chest pain on swallowing, and a non-external chest pain with central pain. All maybe a reflux disease that she is having, a long-standing reflux disease.
Only just reflux disease.
Esophagitis.
Reflux plus something else, or simply reflux esophagitis with severe ulceration.
And sir, progressing with solids difficulty could be going into a stricture.
So stricture. So you think there is a stricture? Okay.
And maybe, okay, sir.
Read this.
Past illness, diagnosed to have a skin disease 10 years ago. She had pain and discoloration of fingers and difficulty in gripping objects and was on irregular treatment for this. Skin biopsy was taken initially and she was told that she is suffering from a chronic disease which is difficult to cure and she would take lifelong medications. She has taken multiple courses of prednisolone and cyclophosphamide for initial 5 years. Now she takes medicines only when there is exacerbation.
You got any clue?
Hello.
We don't know, but it looks like we have no diagnosis. But I think skin disease taking cyclophosphamide and steroids on and off, and then reflux disease and possibly stricture is scleroderma. That's what. Okay.
Any other systemic disease can produce stricture? Name two other which can produce ulceration and strictures.
Sir, like the skin lesions like erythema.
Erythema nodes.
So sorry, sir.
You see erythema nodes in the esophagus.
No, sir. The epidermal.
Name two other skin conditions which can cause strictures and ulceration in the esophagus.
Epidermolysis bullosa and pemphigoid.
Pemphigoid can cause.
Yes, bullous pemphigoid.
Bullous pemphigoid then.
And epidermolysis bullosa.
That's only bullous thing. Epidermal bullosa, they are born actually. Children are born with that. Dermatitis herpetiformis.
And I think in
Occasionally,
Dye's syndrome, when there is
lichen planus can also produce ulcerations and strictures. Okay.
And another condition is a congenital thymic aplasia, Dye syndrome, where they have a candida disease from the beginning, from the newborn phase, and they develop a long stricture. In fact, one of the conditions which will produce.
That's what I think is epidermolysis bullosa.
Okay. So these are the findings. Okay. Now we will go to. Okay.
It looks like
she's already made a diagnosis. So this is the variant. This is the endoscopy.
Okay, sir. It shows the ulcerations and there is the luminal narrowing, circumferential luminal narrowing, sir.
So severe ulceration and a stricture. So but how will you approach this patient?
In the barium swallow.
Yes, sir.
The barium swallow. What does it arrow show?
Arrow shows the site of strictures. And
there is a dilatation of the proximal esophagus.
Okay, sir.
Stricture, and there is some. This one. I don't know what is this. Is this esophagus?
This looks like a stomach.
It's a stomach hiatus hernia, sir. Because that's a mucosal fold, sir.
This looks like stomach hiatus mucosal stricture. This is dilated esophagus.
The stricture is short or long?
Okay, I will give
a short. Hello, sir.
Short.
Short stricture. Less than 2 centimeters.
Stricture is short. When do you call
less than 2? So the extent less than 2 centimeters is short, sir. More than 2 centimeters.
Long is more than
2 centimeters.
Okay.
And the upper ogitiscopy showed multiple areas of ulceration in the lower end, a narrowing of lower esophagus 30 centimeters from the incisor, and not allowing the passage of the endoscope. Biopsies were taken. The histopathology report showed ulcerated esophageal mucosa with mild atypia, Barrett's esophagus with moderate dysplastic changes in non-ulcerated areas. No definite malignancy seen.
Yes, management.
Yes, sir. First of all, I would like to manage the stricture first.
Oh.
We can either do a I would like to do a CRE dilatation.
Okay, the entire area is ulcerated. So, are you very happy to go and do dilatation?
So,
you have seen it, 360-degree ulceration, no?
So there is high risk for perforation.
Okay. So,
Will I initially initiate a treatment with high dose PPIs
okay.
and sucralfate.
How long you'll give PPI in this patient?
At least for 8 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks.
Scleroderma.
Hello.
Scleroderma.
We are thinking scleroderma. And she has got, so the first question comes, why do they develop strictures in scleroderma?
Because the laxity of the LES. So increased risk of
you do a manometry in scleroderma. What will you find?
So definitely you will get a type 1 type of peristalsis.
No, what do you get? What will be the IRP in scleroderma?
IRP will be.
Which segment is involved, doctor? In scleroderma, which is normal and which is abnormal? Which segment is normal?
Basically, this is a motility disorder.
Yes, sir.
Which segments get involved in scleroderma? Upper, middle, lower.
What is the musculature of the esophagus?
So the upper esophagus is with the striated muscles, ma'am. And as we go lower, smooth muscle.
What happens in the middle? Upper you said, lower you said. What happens in the middle?
The middle. Smooth muscle.
Oh, God.
The upper is the stratified muscle, and middle and lower is smooth muscle.
Which is affected in scleroderma?
The smooth muscle is affected. Yes.
Be clear about all this, okay? Basics.
Okay, apart from the smooth muscle destruction, is there any other pathology in scleroderma in the esophagus? Degeneration of the smooth muscles, agreed. Is there any other pathology? Fibrosis, inflammation, all those things are there. And
the esophagus almost becomes tubular.
Okay.
So your lower esophageal sphincter pressure is very low, IRP will be low, and then you will have a very, very ineffective, almost absent contractility in the lower esophagus. So you have a constant reflux, and this could be causing the ulceration and stricture formation. So you need to dilate the stricture, and to prevent further, you need to put these patients on PPI for a
period of at least 6 to
longer period of duration.
It's lifelong.
Lifelong almost.
To prevent a stricture, you have to continue. There is a reflux that causes septic stricture.
Okay. Endoscopic grading is with the Los Angeles classification. Grade A, the mucosal break of less than 5 millimeters. Grade B, more than 5 millimeters. Grade C, it involves more than 2 columns of mucosa, and grade 4 is superficial involvement.
What is the grade seen in the Indian population?
Ma'am?
What is the common grade seen in the Indian population?
Common grade, ma'am. Grade A, I'm not sure.
What percentage would be grade A, B, C, D?
Predominantly.
What's the prevalence of Barrett's in India?
Prevalence of Barrett's less than 20%.
Must be answers if a way, no?
Okay. When you ask a question like that, it must be based on some Indian literature. Okay. Please try to find out. Okay. Second question we have already asked. Third question. How will you diagnose hiatus hernia on endoscopy?
Hiatus hernia by the Hills, like on retroflexion. You can assess the tightness of the G junction around, or the G junction, the scope, the tightness of the scope around the G junction.
Okay. So we
and
can
the laxity.
Do it on a forward view and you can also do it on a retroflex view.
Turnaround view.
Okay.
Distance
More-
between the Z line and this thing.
Z line and more than 2 centimeters.
When
also
you
spin
turn
down.
around, if you see an inverted bell appearance,
What's the difference between sliding and paraesophageal?
paraesophageal hernia.
What is the difference between the two?
Paraesophageal sliding, ma'am, in paraesophageal, the G junction is maintained in the abdomen itself. Only the fundus goes up, ma'am. But sliding, the G junction also gets pulled up into the thorax.
Which is more worrisome?
More worrisome is sliding. It causes more reflux.
Okay. Next, endoscopic methods of treatment of GRD.
Endoscopic methods, the latest, there are various endoscopic techniques, like you can placate the G junction, you can do RFA at the G junction, and mucosal resection, submucosal EMR, mucosal resection at the G junction.
Okay. Then peptic stricture. What are the options for treatment?
So
One is
peptic
agitation. Okay.
and the stenting.
Okay. Sometimes. Okay. Surgery also.
Okay.
Some people
Refractory, then you have to go for
What
defend
is
bad.
step one? Step one is peptic stricture. Step one
sir?
is dilatation. Supposing you want to do a subarigular peptic stricture, which is a benign stricture. So what will be the stepwise management of a benign stricture in the esophagus? Step one will be
So step one will be dilatation, sir.
dilatation with a subarigular or with a balloon.
Or okay, sir.
With a balloon. Till what extent you will dilate? Till what millimeters?
Sir, ideally, like below 13 millimeters is the critical diameter.
16 millimeters you will dilate. Okay. How many sessions of dilatations you will do before you?
Sir, to at least 5 sessions, 2 weeks apart should be done, sir. If still we can't attain
5 times already 2 weeks apart, and you should minimum dilate up to
16 millimeters.
14 millimeters.
And if you can't attain that,
as a refractory stricture.
refractory acid.
So, and after that, if you do not, does not still respond, step 2, what do you do?
So between surgery.
Can you place
steroid injection?
Sir, triamcinolone injection in the initial.
Anything else injection?
You can use a steroid injection. You can use a mitomycin.
Mitomycin.
Otherwise, if there is some, say, somebody has got the Schatzki's ring, which is very resistant, what can you do? What is incisional therapy?
Sir, you can do with a sphincterotomy or a cystotomy, you can do you can break the rings.
No, you can do a cruciform incision on the thing with a needle knife. And
Needle
then,
knife.
okay, supposing still refractory, what else can you do?
A stent.
Stent. Uncovered, covered.
A benign, you can always do a covered stent.
Covered stent. Partially covered, fully covered.
Fully covered.
Why? Why not partially covered?
Like if all you have to removal will be very difficult. So,
why will the removal be difficult in a partially covered stent? What can happen at the uncovered area?
In growth and inflammation.
It could be intimal hyperplasia.
And ingrowth.
So you put a fully covered stent. How long you will put a fully covered stent?
So at least 3 to 6 months. I'm not sure about duration.
Not more than 4 weeks. And if that's still not getting up, then you can do a
surgery.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, we have only few more minutes. So what is the definition of Barrett's endoscopically, histologically?
Barrett's, sir, a tongue-like the salmon color mucosa of the gastric mucosa getting extended into the esophagus, tongue-like projection beyond the G junctions.
Only that?
And so according to the
What is short segment, what long segment?
a short segment is less than 2 centimeters and long segment is more than 2 centimeters.
Okay, tell us the treatment of Barrett's esophagus with severe dysplasia. Just name the procedures.
Sir, with severe dysplasia, you can do endoscopic mucosal resection.
Okay.
Or RFA.
Okay.
And you should always make, more importantly, you should always be in surveillance if you're just doing endoscopy. If it is having severe high-grade dysplasia with endoscopic mucosal resection, you should be in close follow-up with endoscopic surveillance with biopsy for at least 3 months in 3 months for the first 1 year, and the next year every 6 months, and every year after.
So basically, ablative therapies and resections.
Resection therapy.
Ablative
How do you
therapy.
find out whether this Barrett's endoscopically, the Barrett's has got dysplasia or not? What are the ways?
Sir, you can use narrowband imaging.
One narrowband imaging. Okay. In narrowband imaging, you say there's a dysplasia.
And with chromoendoscopy with Notla.
Tell me, you said narrowband imaging. Tell me the features in a narrowband imaging Barrett's, which will tell you that this will guide you to take biopsy. The advantage of NPI is you can do a
vascularity
guided biopsies. Okay.
Yes. The pattern of vascularity.
What is the normal pattern of vascularity? It will be looping.
Looping.
Supposing it becomes straight and then irregular, that is one thing. Number two.
And the mucous, the pattern
Pattern of the cells will be
pattern of the cells
crowded.
Crowded.
Then
other options we can do
demarcation line, all these things.
Okay.
Please read up all those things, okay?
Okay.
In chromoendoscopy, how do you do?
Chromoscopy by methylene blue or endocarmine cream. You can
or Lugol's item.
Okay, you can delineate the margins that you can easily find out the nodularity. Sir?
Methylene blue.
Okay. So hello, sir. Sorry.
Or indigo carmine, right?
Okay, indigo carmine.
Please read up all these things. Okay. How does the Lugolidine will pick up? Lugolidine, because there won't be any glycogen, it will show up as a pale thing, but indigo carmine will look up more as a brighter lesion in dysplastic cells. Okay.
Okay.
You should know the NBI features of this one. Importantly, you should not look for, you should always look at the light endoscopy and try to pick up this one. Okay?
Okay.
Light endoscopy and pick up a lesion. Then only you should either go for a chromoendoscopy or switch on your NBI. Most of the times with light endoscopy, that crowding, that nodularity, if you spend some time in G junction, you'll be able to find. And please know about the Prague classification of EMM classification.
Yes. About the
what is a simple stricture in esophagus and what is a complex stricture?
So simple, it is like the centimeter also, so less than 2 centimeter.
Simple stricture is less than 2 centimeters. It is short, straight, and allows the endoscope.
Okay.
Complex stricture?
More than 2 centimeter and tight stricture that requires.
Correctly give me diagnose the definition, doctor. Don't tell me it's tight stricture. All strictures are tight. Simple stricture is straight, less than 2 centimeters, allows the passage of endoscope. Keep your definitions very, very right. Complex stricture is longer than 2 centimeter, angulated, not allows a passage of scope. Okay?
Okay.
And you should know simple stricture is caused by peptic stricture, eosinophilic esophagitis, Chatsky's ring, and Webb's. Complex stricture could be caustic, radiotherapy, complex anastomotic, and what are the other common causes of the strictures now? What are one common cause of stricture now?
Iatrogenic.
Endoscopy has progressed.
Sir, with the iatrogenic, like if you do more of like mucosal resections.
Not
For
mucosal
GRD.
resection. You do of endoscopic submucosal resection, then you can get stricture. So in ESD, do you get a simple stricture or complex? You get a complex stricture.
Okay.
So this thing. So keep your definitions well and this thing. Eosinophilic esophagitis can come either as a complex stricture or a simple stricture.
Professor Rajesh, you want to make any comments?
One question in the chat box is there, what is CREST syndrome? I think Dr. Ajit Tarkan has discussed it.
Joe, you can be on video. Joe, what is
So
CREST syndrome?
CREST is calcinosis cutis. R stands for Raynaud's phenomenon. E is esophageal dysmotility. S is sclerodactyly, and T is telangiectasia.
Telangiectasia. Okay, good. Jayadi ma'am, any further things?
Well discussed.
Okay, I think we have covered the esophagus. Please read up about this Barrett's esophagus, its diagnosis, management, and not often discussed. Then lymph node. I am very concerned about the lymphatic drainage of esophagus and the stomach. Please don't make mistakes, because as Professor Vishadatta told, these are things which we learned during our MBBS. So please don't make mistakes on MBBS topics. If that is one thing I have noticed in examination is that examiners get extremely cut up if you make a very fundamental basic mistake. They won't tolerate it. They may not bother if you don't tell about photodynamic therapy and all those things. Okay, they may not bother much. But this is fundamental things you have to be very strong. And with these words, we wind up. Dr. Sojan, are you there for the formal closing?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, I am here. I am here, sir.
Okay.
Good evening to all. As it is a formal duty of mine to propose a vote of thanks, let me do that. I should specially thank Venkatakrishnan sir, Jayanti ma'am, Varghese sir, Rajesh sir, and all the PGs who presented the cases well.